The Torah portion of Pinchas begins by tracing the lineage of Pinchas, also known as Phineas. It begins by saying, Pinchas, son of Elazar, son of Aaron the priest. Why does the Torah do this? So Rashi, the 11th century commentator, fills us in here. He explains that Pinchas had a somewhat dubious lineage on his mother's side and a very honorable lineage on his father's side. His mother's father was Putiel, a descendant of Jethro, who was an idol worshipper. And after this tremendous act of heroism where Pinchas killed the tribal leader who was acting dishonorably with a Midianite woman in front of the tent of meeting, the other leaders of the tribes were making fun of him. And they said, "Did you hear about this guy whose mother's father fattened calves for idol worship? And now he has killed a tribal leader." To counteract this, the Torah begins by tracing his honorable lineage, Pinchas, the son of Elazar, the son of Aaron the priest. What motivates a critic? Why do we love to criticize people? So there's two possible reasons. Number one is because, you have great values and it irks you when someone does something wrong, when someone acts inappropriately. That's one possible reason. Another reason, which is very hard as a human being to admit to yourself, is because it bothers you that someone else has done something impressive and you haven't. And rather than admit to yourself, wow, that person's amazing, he's done something so impressive, and I really have to, start making a self-evaluation. Why didn't I do that? Maybe I need to work on myself more to be as impressive as him or her. Instead of doing that, the easy path is to become a critic and to sit back and say, oh, you know what? It wasn't so great, to start being cynical, to start poking holes in the other person's actions, because really you don't want to live up to your own insufficiencies. So the message we have from the beginning of the Torah portion is, it's better to be an activist than a critic. And when you feel this urge to criticize coming upon you, start questioning yourself. Is this person really doing something so terrible? Or is it me not wanting to upgrade, not wanting to improve myself? Okay, let's move on to chapter 27, verses 1 to 5. We have the interesting story of the daughters of Tzlafchad, who come to Moses and they say that our father died, he didn't inherit any land. Please, could you grant us, as women, a portion of the land? They stress, interestingly, in verse 3, our father died in the desert. He was not part of the group that rebelled against God, nor was he in Korach's assembly. They stress that. And then later in verse 5, Moses doesn't know what to do, so he brings the case before God. Why didn't Moses know what to do? This is unusual. He was the legal decider in so many instances. He judged from morning to evening, every single case. He knew exactly what to do. So Rabbi Bachaya, the 13th century commentator, says as follows, that every human being is affected by bias, personal bias, even Moses. And that is why, when the daughters of Tzlafchad said to him, oh, do you know what? Our father was on your side. He wasn't on Korach's side. He was with you. Moses could no longer remain impartial. Now, he had to bring the case before God because they'd offered him a subtle form of bribery, of bias. They said to him, this was a good guy. He voted for you. He was on your party. So due to his now position of being not impartial anymore, Moses had to bring the case before God. And there's a Kabbalistic idea also, a Kabbalistic bias. From the previous weeks, if you've been watching this video cast, you will know that the struggle between the souls of Cain and Abel reemerges in every generation in many situations. And of course, as we've discussed in the past, the soul of Abel was reincarnated into Moses. And the soul of Cain was reincarnated into Korach. The daughters of Tzlafchad said, our father was not part of Korach's assembly. Actually, Tzlafchad had a soul, which was a spark of Cain's soul. So really, spiritually, he belonged in Korach's assembly. And yet he had the wisdom and the foresight not to join Korach. and wasn't part of the rebellion. But Moses knew that he had a soul of Cain, and so really he was pitted from the other camp. And that is why the daughters of Slavchad had to stress, our father wasn't part of Korach's assembly. I know, you know that we are souls of Cain. We're not from your soul root. And therefore we're really from the other side, but we were the good guys. We weren't, despite our soul root being aligned with Korach, we didn't join his assembly. Now let's move on to chapter 27, verse 20. Here we have the interesting story of Joshua being appointed as the successor of Moses, and Moses places his hands on Joshua, and we read the following. Verse 20, God says, grant him some of your glow, some of your hide. The word for glow is hide. What is going on here? So, according to the Kabbalah, God has 10 attributes. He manages the world with 10 different faculties, which are called Sefirot. And the abilities of a prophet. Where does prophecy come from? So the Kabbalists explain that prophecy comes from some of the lower Sefirot of Netzach, victory, and Hod, glory. That is where prophecy comes from. What is the significance of this? So, as we know, God has no body. We say in the 13 Principles of Faith, he has no body, he has no likeness of a body. But nevertheless, the Kabbalists used anthropomorphic metaphors to explain the function of the different Sefirot. And Netzach and Hod, which grant prophecy to a person, are considered to be, metaphorically, the right and left legs of God. Only a metaphor. What does it mean? Well, just like your legs take you to a place that you wouldn't be able to get to without having legs, what does prophecy do? It takes the Torah and makes it relevant in a different era. It carries the Torah into every generation, because the Torah can never change. The 613 commandments of the Torah will never be abrogated, but they need fresh encouragement in every generation. The prophet of each generation needs to make that Torah fresh, startling, and relevant. So therefore, the prophet is considered to be the right and left legs of God, because they transport the Torah and make it relevant in each generation. And so here Moses is granting Joshua some of his prophetic spirit. But interestingly, why was he given the Hod and not the Netzach? Netzach is the right leg of God, whereas Hod is the left leg. Surely Moses should have passed on to his disciple the stronger and superior right leg, and not Netzach and not Hod. The Zohar explains, interestingly, that there was a problem with the right leg. Remember back to Genesis 32:26 when Jacob had that fight with the ministering angel of Esau, and they fought until the morning, and then ultimately the angel of Esau attacked the right leg of Jacob and he was limping? Well, there's a great symbolism to that. What actually happened is that angel, that demonic angel, caused a blemish in the Sefirah of Netzach. And therefore prophecy was only possible through the Sefirah of Hod until much later, until the generation of Samuel, when Samuel would later correct this spiritual blemish and make possible prophecy through Netzach. But at that time, it was only possible through Hod, and that is why Moses granted Joshua some of his Hod. Spiritual exercise for the week. This is the portion of Pinchas. Pinchas was a zealot, and I prefer to call him an activist. So try and make some soul searching. See if you can find in yourself the fearless energy, the lack of hesitation that activism necessitates. Overcome your powerlessness, your ambivalence, and find within you the spirit to always take bold, decisive action when necessary. Thank you very much for joining us. Listen again next week to Torah in 10.